Hey, it's Matt with Xuron Audio, and this is the bench where I work on vintage stereo equipment. Let me just get this pesky Meguiars 2270 out of the way, no big deal. My goal with this video is just to show you the tools that I use, my bench setup currently, and then talk a little bit about what I want to improve with this, because I'm actually going to be building a new bench that'll replace this. So kind of just start with, what tools I use and how I made the bench and organization of things, and we'll go through some equipment that I have sitting around and whatever, some fun little treats if you watch towards the end. So start out, the bench itself is a custom thing I made. The top is separate from the bottom, so it just kind of sits on there and then it's against the wall. This is just a piece of plywood that I then screwed these supports into and put the pegboard on the back, and I mounted a light up top just to give the room a little bit of light reflected off the ceiling. And this is just a wire shelf, so it's just those 3/4 inch pipe, 48 inch wide, like 18 or 19 inch deep shelves, and then the actual bench top is an inch or two deeper. The problem with this setup is, as you can see, it's just really shaky, and it's also only about 19 inches to this back post here, 19 or 20, and that's barely big enough to work on anything bigger than a Meguiars 2270. So a Meguiars 2325, a Sansui 7070 even, or a 9090, they're just pretty much too big. They take up the whole bench, so you just have no space to work in front of them, not to mention it's just shaky. So with the new bench, it's going to be bigger. That's my only thing. But as a starting point, this, I used some kind of scrap plywood. Pegboard's really cheap. This is some 1 or 2x2 maybe. I guess it's 2x2. And this bench is very cheap. I mean, you can get one of these shelves for maybe 60 bucks or something. You can find them on Facebook for less than that, used. And then it allows you to have flexibility with the position, the height of the bench, and also the height of your secondary shelves and that sort of stuff. So I do like the bench, but it's just time to build something bigger and better. So with that said, I guess let's get into some of my tools. So the tools I use the most often, probably this Hakko FR 301. This is a vacuum desolder gun. So you've probably seen these all over the place. The tips on these is, this is the Japanese 100 volt version that you can find on eBay for, I believe, $150. That's how much I paid for this. Normally they're about $300 for the 120 volt version, but the 100 volt version, from everything I read, a couple other people had used them for a couple years and had no problems, and now I've used this for a couple years and I've had no problems. So you can save 50% on one of them if you want one. It just makes it way more approachable, and there's no, I mean, I use this all the time and I've used it for 2 years and no issues. So I would just recommend saving the 150 bucks and buying the Japanese 100 volt version. And then I recommend getting one of these stands for it as well. It just helps so that you don't have it just sitting around or anything, because it can slide off your bench really easy or whatever. So the stand is really helpful. The problem with the stand is that the cord kind of hits the bench top, so it doesn't work the best if you put it kind of up the bench. So you can, cut a piece of wood and secure it to the bottom or something. I know Ben from Novolux Stereophonic has that on his. And I'm thinking about mounting mine kind of up on the back of the bench in the future or something like that. I'm really not sure, but got lots of new ideas for the new bench. So that's a great tool. Then my soldering iron is just a Hakko FX 888. I believe it's the D variant. There's a couple of versions of this, but it's around $100, $110, temperature controlled rather than wattage, so you can just set the temperature you're going to solder at. I solder at usually like 600 degrees. It depends. Sometimes I'll go lower than that, down to maybe 500, and if it's a bigger joint, maybe up to 700 or 800, but usually that's pretty rare that I change from 600. And I know there's lots of different, I honestly might be soldering too hot, I don't know, but 600 is a nice cross between being hot so it goes pretty quick, and also not being so hot where you overheat little transistors and stuff. And if you are really worried about overheating transistors, you can just clip an alligator clip onto the leads of the transistor to use as a heat sink, that sort of thing. I usually don't do that, but I haven't had any issues with it. So from there, I keep most of my tools on the back of this pegboard, which is another thing I want to change. I kind of want to keep them in drawers. We'll see how I feel about that. The ones I use the most, I may still just keep really easy to reach like this, but a good pair of long needle nose pliers is an absolute must. Some of these 170 side cutters, which is just wire trimmers, really nice. And then I have these shorter 90 degree needle nose pliers that come in handy every now and then. And then this is a lead bender. So for resistors and stuff, if you want them spaced off of the PCB, you can just use this, which these are Xuron, Xuron, and these aren't that expensive. I think they're maybe 20 bucks or something, and they save you a lot of time. There are nicer Weller versions and whatever, but they're all more expensive than that by a wide margin. So if you can get the tool for cheaper, you might as well just do that. Second, or not really second, but I'm gonna just be talking about a lot of tools. It's gonna be a long video. You should strap in. You probably see how long it is. Not pliers, tweezers. I have 2 sets of tweezers. These long tweezers are really helpful if you drop a screw or something down in a unit. Sometimes they're helpful for other things. I used to use them a lot more. Now I use the needle nose a lot more. But then the really fine point curved needle nose pliers I use these as often as I use any of these other tools. I use them all the time. Very helpful. I have this screwdriver here that is just a multi-bit screwdriver. Honestly, I will probably just get rid of this because I got a ratcheting screwdriver. This is a Klein Tools ratcheting screwdriver that has a bunch of different bits in the handle, and this is way faster than just using a solid screwdriver. I used to use this all the time. This is just way better, and I probably haven't used this ever since I bought this for about a year or more. So I would definitely recommend getting a ratcheting driver. And then from there, let's see, getting into some other tools. So I use this pretty regularly. This is a capacitor drain tool. So it's a brass rod with heat shrink tube all up it, and then a 120 ohm, I believe, yeah, 120 ohm 10 watt resistor soldered into the tube and then insulated from soldered into the brass rod and then insulated from the rod, and then it comes out the back to an alligator clip that you can clip to ground. This is really nice to use for draining filter capacitors on amps that don't have a bleeder resistor on the filter smoothing capacitors. It's good to just pull, you know, if you can get it below 5 volts setting in those caps, then that's just a lot safer and when you're working on a device. So it's good to have one of these. I use that on, I generally check to see if a device has bleeder resistors, and if it doesn't and it holds a lot of voltage for a long time, then every time I turn it off before I get into working on it, I will bleed the filter caps down to less than 5 volts. I'm kind of OCD about it. It's also kind of fun to watch the voltage go down, so I get it under a volt usually. It'll kind of recharge after that. But anyways, from there, I also use this Fluke 87V multimeter. This is the second Fluke that I've purchased, they're more expensive multimeters, and I mean, I really like Fluke. They're also from Washington State, which is kind of fun. I'm in Bellingham, Washington, and Fluke is based down in Everett, which is just a little south of me. And this is the multimeter I started with. It's a Fluke 114, and this is a fine multimeter, but it doesn't have a diode check function. It doesn't have capacitance mode. It doesn't have some of the features that this bad boy has. And this is just a nice meter, and it's about double the price I paid for this, but I got it used. I got both of these used, but I paid about twice as much for the Fluke 87V. Honestly, I would recommend either just getting a cheap meter that has like some sort of Harbor Freight, you know, $30 multimeter or something that has the diode check functions or whatever. To start. But some of those meters also can be not particularly safe for higher current measuring and that sort of stuff, whereas this is just going to be really good. You know, this measures amps and milliamps also. It doesn't just do volts, and so you can measure current with it, which is really nice. And some of those cheaper multimeters that let you measure current, they're just not as safe. And so generally speaking, if you're just going to be measuring voltages and that sort of stuff, and you know how to use a multimeter, you're going to be all right with a cheaper meter. But I would definitely recommend eventually getting a Fluke or something else that is nicer. And if you use the battery powered meters, you don't have to worry about any, you know, ground loops or anything like that. You can get a bench multimeter as long as you're aware of just not doing any ground loops, then you'll be fine. I'll probably get a bench multimeter eventually, but for now I like the portability, because if I want to go work on my car or something, I can also use the Fluke 87V. So on to my magnet strip. I use these couple of helping hands. I have a helping hands that sits on a stand too, and it's like a couple of arms, and it's a heavy stand and whatever. I found that I just use these more often, so I kind of just stopped using that one because it took up a lot of space. So these just both have a magnet in the bottom, and it's just like an alligator clip on there. And it's useful if you're trying to, you know, getting into a unit and you have to pull a board up to get to a board below it, and the board above it, you don't want to desolder all the wires and have it, you know, fully remove it. You want to just keep it pulled up, you can just magnet one of these bad boys onto the chassis and then clip it to the board, and it'll hold the board up for you. So those are very nice. I use them all the time. I always have an X-Acto knife, classic utility knife at the bench, and then I have this array of just like small screwdrivers up here. Phillips, flathead, whatever. They come in handy for all sorts of different stuff. It's just kind of like random tools. Even these are the cleaning tools for my Hakko FR 301, but this is actually a small flathead screwdriver, and it's so long and thin that occasionally it just comes in handy. So these are sorts of tools that you don't like necessarily think about needing, but then when you need them, they're just there, which is also why I have this really long Phillips screwdriver, because sometimes this just isn't long enough and you need to dig down, you know, 8 inches into something or whatever, however long this is, and that's probably close to a foot, and remove some screws. And that's why I have this, just nice to have. I have scissors, I have my wire strippers up here. These are just really quick wire strippers. Obviously, I used to use the plier type that has the holes. You put the wire in and you know, strip the end of the wire off. This is honestly just faster. It's faster and it's more accurate. It has a little spacing thing that you can slide forward and backwards in here. And these are just VCElink from Amazon. They're nothing special. These are like $10 and you can buy these at Home Depot or wherever, but those are nice to have. I have a wire wrap tool up here if I need to rewrap a wire on a post, or usually they break when you unwrap them and try to wrap them again. And so I'll just use some new hookup wire and throw it in the wire wrap tool and wrap it on those little stanchions. And then I have just a few Allen keys up here of different sizes. These are for removing the knobs. Some units, the knobs have a little Allen set key on them that holds the knob in place. Sometimes there's 2 on a knob, and these are the 3 sizes I use most often for removing the knobs, and I just keep them up here. I have the rest of my Allen keys over in these bins over here, which are the bane of my existence. These bins, this one actually used to be lower down here, and I moved it up because if you tip a unit sideways, this bench isn't that deep, like I've said before, and so if you stand a unit up on its side, it'll hit my pry tools, things that stick out from here, and knock them out just over and over. So I definitely am excited to have a deeper bench and then also not have just like bins loaded with things. I want to have a toolbox or something so that for my tape and other things like that, string, whatever, I don't have to have it just sitting out here where I don't use it. I want to have just like a bin of tape and a bin of string or whatever. So and then on that note, one of the only things I use frequently I haven't really talked about is these guys, which they also fall off. These are rocket sockets. I found about these from Ben at Novalex Stereophonic, another YouTube channel, and they're phenomenal. I think these are pretty much a must-have if you're working on equipment full-time, because a lot of the times faceplates are held on with little washers over the controls, and if you use a crescent wrench or a socket or something that's metal to remove them, you stand the chance of scratching the faceplate, whereas this is a nylon or maybe ABS plastic socket. And so it's not really built to, you know, loosen something that's super tight, but usually those aren't that tight, and you can just hand loosen it and then pull it off the rest of the way by hand. That way you don't scratch the faceplate. So these are super nice. I have the 4 sizes I use the most are just sitting out here on hooks, and then I have the other couple sizes back here. And in this bin up here, I just have a bunch of like assorted random pry tools and screwdrivers. I have a bunch of these ceramic screwdrivers for adjusting the bias and offset tremors on units. Just, you don't want a conductive tool floating around in your unit if you can help it with a bunch of exposed metal, so ceramic tools are nice. This flat pry tool, I have a couple of them, and they come in handy sometimes. You just don't know, they're for like phones and stuff, but sometimes you just need a little tool that can sneak in there. And I think I originally made these with the little hooks on the end for pulling the covers off of relays to clean relays, which I don't like clean them anymore. I just replace them generally. I have a bunch of them just in stock all the time. But they were really nice for doing that. With the 2 little hooks on the sides, you could stick them down on the sides of the relay case and then just pull them up into the case and then pull out, and it would just pop the case off, which was really nice. So they can be useful for all sorts of things, which is why I keep them around. I also keep these nylon spudgers around, which are super useful. They're just a plastic pry tool, pointy on one end, flat, and pointy on the other. This is the resistor bender, or you know, I use it for diodes, whatever, just to get the exact size that you want for the lead bending. These are like $5 online. I think I bought this one from Mouser. It was probably too expensive because it was from Mouser. Mouser's great for parts and things, but then other random stuff like this or LEDs, they're just really expensive compared to other options. Then I have, this is just a tool for pulling the front off the FR301 solder gun. I have another precision X-Acto knife up here. I use these for varying reasons. I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to which one I use when, but sometimes having the nice long thin blade, like pulling off a Marantz faceplate to put new vellum paper on or something, this one can be really nice. It just sticks out a little easier than the box knife. I have the rest of the rocket sockets. I have my Allen keys up here. This is probably one of the things I need to invest in that I keep thinking about. I just haven't bothered to buy a nice set of Allen keys. I would like to get some that have the handles on them rather than these, and also I'm missing a couple sizes in here, a few sizes, and it would just be nice to have a more thorough kit of them. So that's one of the things probably tools I'm gonna purchase here soon. Other than that, that's just rocket sockets up there. I have a crescent wrench up here for pulling off things real quick, just if I need to pull off a washer or something that's a little stuck that doesn't come off with a rocket socket or whatever. I have like a wrench set under my bench that I can pull out, socket set, if I need to, but the crescent wrench just works for some things. I don't use it for everything, but sometimes if I just need to undo one washer or whatever, I'll just pull the crescent out of there. It's just faster. In this other bin, I have a kilowatt sitting over here, which is just, you plug it into a wall outlet, you plug your device under test into it, and then you can see how much current it's drawing. I'll use that in conjunction with my dim bulb tester sometimes. I have a solder sucker. Sometimes the vacuum, just the FR301 doesn't fit into a place, and so I still use my soldering iron and wick, or I use one of these. It's just a sucker, you push it down and push the button and it pulls air in. These are really cheap, and honestly, you should probably get familiar with how to use both of solder wick and the solder sucker before you buy an FR301, because sometimes you're gonna need to use them, and it's nice if you know how to use them and you're not really bad at it. Because I still use both of these, even though I have the FR301. So I have a small 1/4" drive ratchet in there, Sharpie, some multimeter leads, and another X-Acto knife. Just a bunch of random stuff. Oh, I have some alligator clips and 3.5 to lightning adapter in there. I forgot that was in there. That's actually really nice. So in my last bin over here, I have a paint pen, which I find comes in handy sometimes for coloring LEDs. If I don't want to, I have red LEDs, but sometimes I don't want it to be fully red. The red LEDs are too red sometimes. So I'll put a little dot of red on there just to warm up the light and make it more orange. I also have Velcro straps up there and eyelets for fixing PCBs, along with the punch to punch the eyelets into the PCBs. If something, you know, you rip up a copper trace on a PCB, you can just punch an eyelet into there and use a hand drill to, you drill out the hole and then you punch the eyelet in. And this hand drill comes in handy for also just drilling out small holes. Another thing I did for this bench that's kind of silly is I have this soldering iron up here, and I could probably honestly easily remedy this. Sometimes this is really nice because I have the soldering iron up top, and if I pull it down, then the cord is all over the bench and it gets into things, which is also kind of just part of having a tiny bench. It's just there's not enough space here. I have it strapped to my lamp, which is like kind of convenient sometimes, but also it kind of limits my range of motion of the lamp and whatever. So I want to figure out a better solution on my new workbench once I have more space. I'll probably just have the soldering iron down here, but for now, it lives up on these little shelves I made. And I use this, I buy a pound at a time of Kester 6040 solder. I'm not that critical about it. This stuff works phenomenally. It solders great. I have no problems with it. You can buy, you know, solder with silver in it and that sort of stuff, which I have bought some of and used on occasion, but if it's a really high-end piece or something. But honestly, the stock solder was just 6040, pretty much leaded solder back then. So I'm just using what they're using. So unless you're gonna go reflow every single solder joint with silver solder on a unit, then there's no real reason to bother with it. I don't know, that's my take, and it's more expensive. So I also use these. I think also being a tech is also about having all of the random alligator clips and cables to connect things. And so sometimes I use these speaker snap connectors, which are really convenient banana connectors for my load resistors, which are sitting over here on my oscilloscope. And if a unit, you know, if I install banana plug jacks on it or whatever, then I will put these on my load resistors. And they're just really satisfying to use because they just snap the cable into place and Very nice. Going back to the FR301 real quick, another thing I didn't mention was that I have a wide tip on here. So this is really great for desoldering relays and such. They make different size tips. So this is the one that it comes with. It's just a round standard soldering tip. This is nice and wide, and it lets you get over those wide relay contacts and desolder them. So there are different tips you can get, and then you can just swap them with the tool that I showed you earlier, which you just put on there and pull this off. Maybe I'll make a video about this desoldering gun at some point, I don't know. But there are a couple of videos out there on how to clean them and whatever. They're very useful. And moving over to the right side of the bench, I gotta go eat dinner, but we'll do this real quick and then I'll resume tomorrow. These are all my chemicals, glue, cleaning agents, etc. I have more of them down below the bench also, which we'll get into next time. But this is a spray bottle of rubbing alcohol, and I just keep a shop towel here. Just nice for cleaning the surface of my bench or just cleaning whatever I need to clean. I also have tapes down here. Just masking tape. This is Kapton tape, which is like a heat resistive tape. Sometimes I put this over LEDs to give them an orange hue. It doesn't have that orange of a hue though, unfortunately. So I bought, no, that's also Kapton tape. I also bought orange tape, which now I have it down there. But I have double-sided tape, electrical tape, Kapton tape, a few different types. And then I have a few different types of skinny double-sided tape as well. And then I have this kind of thicker padded double-sided tape. All of those come in handy at various points. It doesn't really make sense to keep all these on my bench, so that's definitely one of the things I'm going to change. There's no reason these need to be out here all the time, so I'll just make a little bin for them. And then this is my tuner dial restringing thread, and it's pretty much as good as the original. I bought it orange because I wanted to be different, and I thought it would be kind of fun, but I think it's just a nylon string, and it's kind of rough. It's like a number, I don't even remember. It's just like a bead string, a heavier bead string, and it works great. But I just don't need to use it that often, thankfully, because tuner restringing, not the funnest thing. Sometimes I use this magnetic dish for holding screws. I've kind of gotten away from that, and I tend to use these little tubs down on the bottom of my bench instead that have all that I can put a label on and, or, you know, for what device it is, and then I can seal it up, and if I want to work on something else, I can just get another bin. I have a few of these for that other device. But it's just better to have these different compartments. The magnetic tray still comes in handy for some things, but I'm honestly probably just going to take it off my bench in the future because I don't use it that much. This is a plastics adhesive fixer, so acrylics adhesive, which is pretty much just, it's like a plastic welder. I use it for fixing desk covers on turntables. It just melts the plastic into each other, and it will oftentimes remove the crack too, like it seals it up if you do it right, which is great. This is freeze spray. I don't use this that often, but if you're not sure which transistor is giving you a problem, you can turn it upside down and spray it onto the component to rapidly cool it, and then you'll know if it's that component. This is Deoxit D5. Well, I should clarify, transistors, oftentimes, you know, if you have an issue where as the unit heats up, you have some distortion or something, you can spray that on a transistor to cool it down. And the temperature change will often cause the issue to either go away or to start. And so changing the temperature of a transistor is just really helpful. This is Deoxit D5 for metal contacts. This is a spray bottle. I very rarely use it because it leaves a residue all over the circuit board you spray it on. So instead I use a quick dry contact cleaner like this. This is just whatever Home Depot sells. There are CRC and a couple of other brands, a bunch of brands. I think WD-40 even makes a quick dry one. The real thing that you want is quick dry and then no adhesive or no residue. The D5 leaves a lubricated, you know, oxidation saving residue on everything that it touches. This just doesn't have a residue. It evaporates quicker than rubbing alcohol, so it's really nice for just cleaning out a control. And then I tend to use the needle drippers of Deoxit, the 100L series, so F100 and D100. This is for metal contacts, that's for graphite potentiometers. And it's the next day and I changed shirts and lost the hat. So back to the Deoxit. These needle drippers are a little more expensive than the spray cans, but they last forever. I think I've had this needle dripper for a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years, both of these. And as you can see, they're over half full still. So they last a really long time, even though they're like $35 each or 30 bucks each, however much they are. You can find good deals on them on eBay, Amazon, wherever, but I usually get stuff on eBay. This is some silicone oil. I use that for like turntable dampening the the cueing arm that lifts the arm up and down on an automatic turntable. I have solder flex and a needle syringe as well. I don't use solder flex that often, but then when I do need to use it, it's nice to have it in a needle dripper. You can just squeeze it out. And I put my thermal paste all. My camera stopped recording for some reason right here, so I use Dow Corning 340 thermal paste, and I just have it in this. I put a little bit into this syringe just to make applying it a little less messy, because the big bottle it comes in is just kind of a pain for putting on small transistors. So yeah, little syringe works great. And the Dow Corning 340 is not conductive, which is the main thing that you're looking for in a thermal paste for output transistors and that sort of stuff. You just don't want it to be very conductive or conductive at all. And then I also have Tri-Flow lubricant, which works great for tuning flywheels and stuff. This is E6000. It's a glue for refoaming woofers, 2P10, and the activator, just a super glue, and this activator makes it harden immediately. And then this is just a needle dripper of white lithium grease, and this is some Eileen's, just like Elmer's white glue. I think that's a PVA glue. A couple of other things are this alcohol dispenser and air blaster. This is great versus canned air because it never runs out and there's no moisture in it, like there can be sometimes with canned air if you hold the can wrong or whatever. This is an alcohol dispenser. You push it down, alcohol burbles up, and it's great for getting your Q-tips and stuff wet if you're trying to clean off thermal compound, whatever, that sort of stuff. And then looking down, it gets a little messier underneath the bench down here. Let's what do we have going on? This is a bunch of random glues. Obviously I have this extra Fluke meter. I use Mother's mag and aluminum polish for face plates and other metal surfaces. I have a bunch of like extra Deoxit. This is Fader grease. I've got more F100, just backup stuff. They actually sent me, they sent me some of this stuff for free, which was really nice of them. The guys at Deoxit are great at keg products. JB Weld, 2-part epoxy, that stuff is really useful. This is ScratchX, which is kind of good for polishing dust covers on turntables. And then this is just a silicone RTV. I have another can of D5 down here, which will probably be a couple years before I get to that. These were my old strippers, that I mentioned earlier. They're just so much less time saving, so much, they take so much more time than the other thing. Oh, that's a rag. Honestly, I need to clean down here too, which is why. These are my in-ear monitors. Sometimes I use those for testing things. More alligator clips, that sort of stuff. Nothing crazy. I have like scrubber pads and bulk stuff back here, Scotch tape, whatever. The more interesting stuff is in these drawers actually. So I use Scotch tape for some things. I have this for putting vinyl down on units. This, if you're putting new vinyl veneer on, you can use a scraper like this to make sure you get all the air bubbles out of it. I have labels for things, a little microfiber for cleaning plastic faceplate inserts, like the dial faces and stuff. And then I have just like these furniture pads for using as feet on speakers or whatever I need. And then in here, this is my cleaning section. So I have a little sandpaper. I have this anti-static brush that I use with a vacuum to clean dust off of boards. And then this fiberglass pencil also comes in really handy. It is literally just it extends as you turn this, and it is fiberglass rods, so you don't want to rub it on your finger. You'll get little splinters in your finger, but it works great for cleaning metal surfaces that have oxidized. It is like more rough than using just a cleaner or something, so it can remove a coating if you go really hard on it, but usually if you just take it really light, it's not going to remove the anodization. And then just other anti-static brushes and that sort of stuff. I've got this kit of anti-static brushes and whatever, and I just use them for various things. And I have a few different grits of sandpaper in here if I need it, just a small amount. I don't use it that often. And then this is more just glues and that sort of stuff. This is all my epoxies, whatever. So usual suspects. And then down here, oh, actually one of the other most important things you can get, this is a really crappy one. I need to buy another nicer one because this one isn't very accurate. So I end up using just the scale on here, but this is a caliper. This is another tool that you pretty much need if you're going to work on old stereos, because you need to be able to measure the dimensions of capacitors when you're replacing them sometimes. And it's just really nice to have a caliper around. You'll use it for all sorts of things. So I keep mine there. And then I have the Peak Atlas, the DCA 55 and the ESR 70. This is for capacitors, measuring ESR and capacitance, and then this is for transistors. I would skip the DCA 55. It's a little cheaper than the 75, but I want to get the 75. It just gives you more information and it lets you connect it to a computer, and I think you can even track curves of transistors on it. And so it's more expensive, but I would get the DCA 75 if I did this over again. This is my inverse RIAA filter. So this is for you input a normal signal from the signal generator or whatever into here, and then out this side it turns into the sort of signal that a turntable would put out, so that you can use the phono input on an amp and then run a square wave through it or sine wave, whatever. This is just the Hagerman Labs reverse IRIAA, but I put it in a wood box because I thought it would be a fun project. So it's in a wood box now. And then I have some orange film for making LEDs a little warmer. This is really useful. Oh, you know, paper towels, cotton swabs, like for dipping in alcohol, hookup wire, a couple different gauges of it. So I believe this is 22 gauge, and then this is like 16 gauge or 18 gauge or something, just a little heavier. So have a couple different boxes of those, just keep those on the bottom of the bench. And coming over to the other side, I've got my Q-tips, rags, I have my gloves. I just buy boxes of these gloves because, a little known fact, but the lead in lead solder it doesn't just stay on your skin, it actually absorbs through your skin. So if you don't want lead poisoning and or just increased levels of lead as you age in your body, wear gloves while you solder. It's no matter what the old timers tell you, like, I haven't used gloves for 20 years, I'm fine, or whatever. It's like, that's bad advice. Lead soaks through your skin. So I recommend gloves. It's just good. You're working with lots of, especially if you're just spraying chemicals on things or whatever, like good ventilation, gloves, very important. We'll get to my ventilation in a bit, but then I just have heat shrink tube. I have a couple different boxes of it, and I have some extra longer pieces stored in case I need them, but these are usually good enough for me. And then I just buy bulk Q-tips for cleaning circuit boards and whatever. And speaking of ventilation, so this, I thankfully have a window here, and I have a box fan in it, and I'll just open the window and pull, the fan is blowing outwards, so it pulls air through my room, and thus keeps the solder fumes from piling up in the room, and which is not what you want. That's very bad for you. So solder flux, whatever. Yeah, getting over here, this is my stand of, these are personal projects, so these are not services, these are just, these aren't services, these are just my projects that I'm working through, some of the stuff that I have to list for sale when I'm done with it, and some of these I've just been kind of tinkering with for a year or whatever. Some of them, they're just sitting here because, like this Meguiars 2270, it just needs some work done to it. I use this shop vac here all the time. I want to have it routed on my new bench so that the hose is like comes down from the top so that you can just easily use it, because right now it's on the floor and that's not very useful. So, but yeah, personal projects. I have trimmer resistors, zeners, and diodes, metal film resistors, and metal oxide resistors just organized in boxes here on this shelf, which is just the most compact way to store them. So I have the value written on each bag, and then you can just go through them and see, oh, okay, cool, there's a 150 ohm half watt or whatever. And yeah, that's very nice. I also have ceramic caps in the back, and this is my kind of overstock bins for transistors. I have a bunch of TO3 output transistors in here. There's capacitors and then filter caps and relays. And then up top, I have 3 organized bins of capacitors and relays and other stuff that also want to organize these better so that I don't have to pull these out if I want to get parts from them, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, and then transistors in the bottom. So extra part storage, more personal projects. And then coming over here, this is my kind of test equipment area. Right now it's kind of inconvenient. It's just on this little like cart. It's on wheels, which is fine. But it's just to the side of the bench, and I wish it was over the top of the bench. So on my new bench, there's going to be shelves back there for test equipment, because the other part of this is that if we come around, you can see the rest of my room. So my computer desk is over here. This is where I edit. This is where I look at schematics, etc. And I'm going to merge these 2 benches into one, so that I can just see schematics, just reach over and see them rather than having to turn around and get up and fiddle with the schematic. I just want that right next to it. So, and I have a bunch more test equipment. There's a distortion analyzer right there. And as you can see, a whole stack of Yamahas and whatever in the closet. Got a lot of equipment here. So just having more test equipment, because right now if I want to use my distortion analyzer, I have to like jankily set it up here on the bench, and just kind of one-time thing. I have a heat gun. This is a soldering, like SMD heat gun, but I just like that the tip comes to a fine point, because for working with heat shrink and whatever, it's nice to just be able to know that the heat isn't going everywhere. I don't know why my camera won't focus. There we go. Look at that. So yeah, nice to have those. I have short zip ties and a bunch of other random, I have vice grips. I have a DC power supply down there. Just a bunch of random stuff at this point. And to add, these are my oscilloscope and signal generator, which I use the most. These are my dummy loads. These are 150 watt 8 ohm dummy loads. I have adapters and things. I was using alligator clips to connect them into the speaker terminals. This is a Siglent SDS 1104 XE. It's great oscilloscope. I got it because it has 4 channels and it works with this function generator, so you can do Bodie plots on speaker crossovers. They're connected via USB. I really like them. This is not a low distortion frequency generator though, function generator. So I do have a lower distortion one sitting in the closet here that I pull out if I'm using my distortion analyzer, which I moved out of here already. But it's gonna be on my new bench, and I'm really excited to be able to have easier access to those tools so that I can do that sort of checking. And this is the SDG 1032X. I got both of these used on eBay, which is generally how I recommend buying test equipment, because you don't really need it brand new. I'll turn the light over here. And especially if you're starting out, you might as well just get it used. I got these from an electrical engineering student who took good care of them, so they just have some little marks on them, that's it. And this is my dim bulb tester back here. I made this. This is just a pretty simple Jimmy rig thing. I think it was maybe $20 in parts. I used a Harbor Freight extension cord for the plug. Bought all the rest of the stuff from Home Depot, and then I have 2 100 watt bulbs that I can put in there, so I can get up to 200 watts of dim bulb. And pretty much all that does is, this is a current limiting device. So a light bulb is just a resistor, and you have to use incandescent bulbs for these, not LEDs, because LEDs are light emitting diodes. Incandescent bulb, the piece of wire that emits light is only emitting light because it gets really, really hot. And as it increases in temperature, the resistance of it goes up. And so a 100 watt light bulb has a certain set resistance where eventually the resistance reaches infinity, so no more current can pass through that. And so I have the light bulbs, a dim bulb tester is putting light bulbs in series with your device under test, so that no more than what that light bulb is rated for in current can pass through that device. And so this bulb will light up if there is a short. Say there's a 100 watt bulb. If there's a big short in a unit, this bulb is going to be very bright, which means that it is full resistance because there is 100 watts of current being pulled through it. And so the bulb is bright as though it was in a light socket, and that is a dim bulb tester. So that's why you want to use them, because otherwise if you have a short and you plug it into just a standard wall outlet, you're just going to blow up more stuff in the unit. Whereas if you have a dim bulb tester, there's a good chance that you can just flick there's a built-in power switch on mine. You can just flick that right off and save the unit and maybe only blow 1 or 2 components, or maybe nothing, because you have it current limited. So that is the rest of the test equipment. A couple of other things I wanted to touch on real quick. These are sheet metal pliers, or I don't know if that's actually what they're used for, but that's what I use them for. If I ever get a chassis that's bent, I use these vice grips, and you can just clamp on there and bend chassis back. And then for PCBs and whatnot, if the PCB is removable, having a clamp like this that you can set your PCB in and then be able to spin it, etc. It just helps you work on it and access both sides easier. This is just the Velman VTHH6. I think I got this on Amazon. They're readily available on eBay, on Newark, etc. So underneath I have my drill, my FLIR heat camera. What else do I have down here? Oh yeah, drill. I have my Dremel. I have my old parts bin of takeout parts, and then the FLIR box and some other stuff. My ratchet set, whatever, garbage can, all that. Over there, behind the garbage can in that envelope next to the Marantz 4270 is my turntable stuff. So speed adjustment, tracking force adjustment, all that. So that's my current bench setup. I guess my speakers on the bench are these just kind of crappy little bookshelf speakers. I don't even remember the brand. It's like not Dayton Audio, but it's another, it's like a worse brand than Dayton Audio. They're cheap and crappy, but that's fine because they're just bench speakers. I may get nicer ones in the future. I don't really care that much. They work fine for me. But yeah, that's my room. The new bench is going to go in this corner over here. So over there I have shipping supplies. whatever. Obviously, this is a light, so obviously since I'm filming, it's nice to have bright lights. And this light is on like a tripod that takes up a lot of space on the floor. Not a lot, but enough. I'd like to hang it or mount it somewhere so that I have better light in my bench without having to have that just floating around the room. But yeah, I have a lot of lighting in here just to make the room brighter, which is nice also for just working on things. Your eyes get tired, whatever. I have a bunch of fabrics and stuff over there sitting in a bag. Yeah, I don't know, the usual things, bunch of cables. But yeah, shipping materials. Over here is more shipping materials. Over here is a nice rack of Hafler equipment. So that's all mine. And it's all in various states of functionality. I need to restore it. I think I'm going to sell some of it, but some of it I'm going to use in my wood shop for a bi-amp setup for a set of speakers. So that's a Hafler DH220. That's a Pro 125, and then a 120, and then 3 DH110 preamps. I'll probably sell the 120 and then a DH110, and then keep one of the 110s and use it with the Pro 125 and the 220 to drive a set of speakers. So the low end would be driven with the 220, and then the higher frequencies would come from the 125. So anyways, yeah. Oh, and then I guess I have this little bin over here of just like random connectors and speaker parts and other things, and service manuals, and then extra bins of parts right there, which those are for just other things that I'm in the middle of. I have them all labeled. Yeah, so that's about it. That's the room tour, the bench tour. That didn't actually take that long. I wasn't sure how long I'd be sitting here and gabbing for, but I thought that it would be fun to just trek in and do this little bench tour, because I don't know, it's fun to talk to the camera, and I like showing you guys around. I want to do more videos, you know, in-depth videos on repairs and that sort of stuff. I have a series of videos called YouTube University that I have in a spreadsheet that I keep track of, and I am writing scripts for and whatever, that I want to do probably starting like next year or something. I had some major life changes occur. I don't know if you've been hearing the major life change throughout the video, but you know, the major life change has decided to be quiet. Oh, yeah. So I've just been a little behind on my repairs queue, and I'm obviously prioritizing catching up on that because those are clients that have paid to get in the queue and whatever. But as I have more time and as I catch up on things, then I want to make more videos and yeah, just teach more. And honestly, I think that the part for me is like, this is a very beginner's desk setup or bench setup. Obviously, like, I have been doing this for a few years and whatever, but this is I like showing the journey of me learning. I'm not trying to say that I'm like an expert at this or anything. Like, I get humbled all the time by getting stuck on a circuit or whatever, and then just going and asking questions to techs that I know. There's lots of groups on Facebook and whatever you can join who have more knowledgeable people in them, and by no means am I like the most knowledgeable tech out there. I don't know that much about circuit or different amplifier topologies and that sort of stuff. So troubleshooting can be a little harder sometimes, but I think the truth of it is that usually repairing stuff, like, there's a lot of info you need to know about what transistor substitutions and different capacitor series if you want to get into that and whatever. But overall, it's not actually that hard to just repair things and replace parts, or do, if a unit already works but it just has some minor issues, it's pretty easy to fix those most of the time. And so I want to do, you know, a series of videos as I learn, also getting into more complex subjects, but starting with the basics and, you know, just doing 20-30 videos really deep diving into things. So anyways, I think it's a good time for me to end this video, so thank you so much for watching. It's great to have you along on a longer form video like this. Thanks for making it to the end. I'll see you in the next one. And for those of you who stayed beyond the goodbye, this is a quick preview of my new bench. So old bench used to be over here. That shelf here used to be in that corner. Computer desk was here, and then I just tore down the computer desk and built a much bigger desk. So this new bench is 82 inches long and 34 inches deep, and it's braced against the corner walls to help it have a lot more stability. So it pretty much, I mean, it still shakes when you shake it. I think most benches would shake when you shake them, but it's significantly sturdier than my old bench, and it's significantly bigger. So this is that Meguiars 2270, and I mean, there is space in front and behind it, and it's just so much more solid, super nice to have. So combining these was really nice too, because I don't really need that much space for the computer desk, And so now eventually my bench speakers will also be able to be patched in as my test speakers. So I'll only need one set of speakers up here for both. I'll have a patch panel in this corner that I'll basically just be able to, instead of directly connecting to all my test equipment, I'll have patch cables that run from all of them into a patch panel down here. And then I can just patch between them and just have all the leads over here. And I'm gonna get a different distortion analyzer and low distortion frequency generator that are a little smaller, so that yeah, there's plenty of changes with test equipment, but there are a few other pieces. So this is the Sencor SG80 AM/FM stereo analyzer for doing tuner alignments. I need to really learn how to use that. I just have it set up here and I haven't actually used it yet. So I just got that. And then I also have a new Variac over here, which I also got in Montana when I was picking up a bunch of test equipment and Marantz parts and stuff from a technician who passed away. I will have a video coming out about that at some point. But yeah, right now it's just a little messy. That's kind of the only downside, is all my tools are kind of in random spots because I just needed to make it functional. But down underneath, I'm gonna get a big toolbox with drawers so that I can put all of my tools in the toolbox instead of having this rolling cart over here and boxes and all that crap down there. So it's going to be a lot more organized. There's still a lot of things to do with the bench that I want to change and make better, but for now it is significantly better than the old one. Now I still have a big backlog of videos filmed at the old bench, and actually I think I have a few videos from like a year ago when I was in a different room entirely than this room. So you might see some videos come out. You will probably see videos come out from the old bench still, but I'm using the new bench now. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Lots of new, improvements to make and whatnot. I'd like to have my shop vac is under the desk, but I'd like to have it on a shelf and then have the hose routed up here so that I could just pull the hose down and then just let the hose back up and it would just be connected to the top of the bench. Something like that would be really nice, just to kind of keep it out of the way. And then I have this remote switch to turn off my bench. I'm not really showing you the best angle there. I have this remote switch that just magnets up to here. It actually controls my video light also. And then if I turn the second one on, okay, that's supposed to be the shop vac. I must have unplugged it. Oh no, the bench is off. There we go. Yeah, so I have my whole bench on a remote, which is really useful for just things. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be nice too. Oh, that remote. Anyways, yeah, I'm a big fan, huge fan. It was a big work. I think it took me about a week to tear the other benches down and build the new one and kind of get it to a place where it was really usable. There's still some things I need to change on it, but yeah. Thank you so much for watching to this point in the video. If you do want to support my channel, there are those links in the description for all the tools that I mentioned so far in the kind of first part of the video. I didn't know how many tools you guys would actually want the links for, so I try to just put links for specific things that I kind of either had a hard time finding or they're just like specific tools. If you purchase from the Amazon links, those are affiliate links, and so I do make a small commission off of that, and that's a great way to support the channel if you like watching these videos. So thank you so much for watching, and for the second time, goodbye.